I married a man who would have done anything for me, gave me his heart, his name, his loyalty, and a steady life I took for granted. But I betrayed him in the worst way imaginable. Not with a stranger, not with some old lover. I did it with his own brother. The brother who held our rings at the wedding, who stood right beside him, smiling and trusting, never suspecting the truth. I crossed a line that can never be undone. And now, I've lost it all. My marriage, my family, my soul. The worst part? I did it fully aware of what I was risking. I never meant for it to go this far. That's what people like me say when they get caught, when everything they've built has already turned to ash. But I think I knew, somewhere deep down, that I was going to cross that line long before I ever did. That's the sick part. The part I have to live with now. I didn't trip and fall into betrayal. I walked into it, one step at a time. It started with something beautiful. Real love. The kind that makes you feel like the safest place in the world is someone else's arms. I was 24 when I met him, and he wasn't like the other men I dated. He didn't try to impress me. He didn't push. He just listened. Not in that distracted, polite way people do, but in a way that made me feel like I was being recorded. Like he was tucking every word I said somewhere in his heart, just in case he ever needed to use it to make me smile. He was steady, dependable. When he held my hand, it felt like the world slowed down. He didn't judge me for the mess I was still figuring out. He came with his own bruises. His dad left when they were young, and his mother had to work 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. He'd been taking care of people since he was 13. First his little brother, then his mother, then everyone else. It was in his blood. He never talked about his childhood like it was a burden, but I saw the weight he carried. It was in the way he always offered to pay, the way he apologized for needing help, the way he stepped into responsibility like it was the only way he knew how to breathe. While other boys his age were playing video games and sleeping in, he was folding laundry, making peanut butter sandwiches, walking his brother to school, doing homework on the kitchen floor while Aaron cried about missing their dad. Aaron worshipped him. There were old pictures of them as kids, arms around each other in matching shirts that didn't quite fit. Aaron with scraped knees and a crooked smile. Him with shadows under his eyes and pride in his face. He had practically raised him. That bond stayed, even as they grew up and went in different directions. We got married 2 years after we met. It was a small ceremony. Nothing extravagant, nothing overdone. A quiet chapel, close friends, just enough family. Aaron stood next to him as best man, beaming like he'd just won the lottery. His speech started off full of jokes, teasing his brother for being boring and predictable, for settling down while he was still chasing freedom. But then he turned serious. He looked at him, glass trembling slightly in his hand, and said, "You've always put everyone else before yourself. It's about time someone did the same for you." He turned to me next. "Take care of him. He deserves the world." I remember nodding, smiling, crying a little, holding his hand so tight under the table like I would never let it go. But I would. Not to someone else, to his own brother. It didn't happen overnight. Of course it didn't. It never does. Aaron had been gone for years, drifting from job to job, city to city, always chasing something, never satisfied. But then one day he called, said he was moving back to town and needed a place to crash for a while. Of course we said yes. There wasn't even a question. That's how it was between them. Unspoken loyalty. He helped Aaron out the same way he always had, without hesitation. He moved into the guest room like he'd never left. He cleaned up, after himself, took out the trash, helped with dinner, made jokes, teased, brought wine home and told stories that had us both laughing until we couldn't breathe. He had that kind of energy. He filled a room just by walking into it. And he noticed things. Small things, like when I changed my shampoo, when I wore a new sweater, when I looked tired, and he said, "You okay?" At first, it felt innocent. That attention, that lightness. It had been a long time since someone looked at me like that. Like I was more than just someone's wife. He saw me. I don't know how else to explain it. He really saw me. Not as property, not as obligation, but as a woman, a person, a spark. He wasn't my husband. But sometimes, late at night, when I was alone in the kitchen wiping down counters, and I heard him laugh from the living room, I felt something turn in my stomach that I didn't want to name. I told myself it was harmless. I loved my husband. I still do. In the worst possible way, I still love him. But love doesn't always protect you from destruction. Sometimes it just makes it worse. Because when you love someone, and you betray them anyway, the guilt cuts you in half. Things started to shift slowly. My husband was working longer hours, picking up overtime, trying to save for the house we said we wanted. I told him I was proud of him, but in truth, I missed him. Missed his presence, his attention, his eyes on me. Most nights, he came home too tired to talk. Sometimes he fell, asleep on the couch, uniform still on, shoes barely off. I'd cover him with a blanket and sit next to him, watching him breathe and wondering if this was just what love looked like after a while. Quiet, tired, fading. Aaron never asked why. I was always up late. He just kept me company. We started having wine after dinner. Just one glass. Just a little conversation. We talked about the past, about childhood, about choices we regretted and places we still wanted to see. His life sounded messy and spontaneous, but there was something magnetic about it, something raw and alive. One night, he passed me the wine glass and our hands touched. Just a brush. Just skin on skin. My heart skipped. I pulled away, smiled too fast, changed the subject. But I couldn't unfeel it. That flicker. That pulse. That was the moment I should have shut it down. Made it clear. Reinforced the line. But I didn't. I kept sitting with him. Kept sipping wine. Kept smiling too much at his jokes. Because in those moments, I didn't feel like a wife or a homemaker or a woman whose husband was working himself to the bone to build a future for them both. I felt seen and wanted and shamefully, dangerously alive. That was the beginning. Not a kiss, not a confession, just a look that lasted a beat too long, and a silence that felt charged with everything we weren't saying. And I let it happen, because a part of me wanted to know how far it could go before it broke, before I broke. It was the little things that changed first. A glance held just a second too long. A hand brushing against mine when we reached for the same dish. Him leaning in closer when he laughed. His knee resting against mine under the table and neither of us moving. Not right away. We didn't talk about it. That would have made it real. We pretended nothing was happening. Kept up the performance. But there was something in the air between us now. Something thick and unspoken. Like fog just before a storm. He'd find reasons to linger in the kitchen after dinner. I stopped wearing my ring at night, telling myself it was just because it left a mark on my finger. We were never alone for long, but somehow it was always enough. Enough to feel that tension growing, quiet and patient and hungry. He was bolder when my husband wasn't around. A joke with a sharper edge. A compliment that sounded too smooth. One evening I wore a dress that hugged my hips a little more than usual. Not for him. I told myself that. But the way his eyes moved over me, slow and deliberate, sent a wave of heat up my neck. "You look good," he said. That was all. Just those 3 words. But the way he said them, it wasn't casual. It wasn't innocent. He left the kitchen right after, like he'd dropped something too heavy between us and didn't want to watch it land. That night, I lay next to my husband and stared at the ceiling, He was snoring softly, exhausted from a double shift. I could smell the detergent on his shirt and the faint scent of the coffee he always drank on his drive home. I ran my fingers lightly over the back of his hand, searching for guilt, for clarity, for something that might remind me where my loyalty should sit. But I felt nothing except the memory of another man's voice in my ear. The next time we were alone, it was raining. He was sitting on the back porch, just outside the kitchen. Hoodie pulled up, beer in hand. The door was cracked open to let the breeze in, and I stepped out without really thinking. The rain was light but steady, soft enough to hear your own breath between the drops. He didn't say anything for a long time, just handed me a beer and tilted his head toward the lawn like we were watching something only we could see. "You happy?" he asked eventually. The question caught me off guard. "What? Just, are you happy?" He didn't look at me. With this life, with him, with everything. I should have said yes, instantly, loudly, defensively. But I hesitated. And that silence? That was louder than any answer I could have given. He turned his head just slightly, his eyes meeting mine in the dim porch light. And I saw it. What I'd been pretending wasn't there. He wanted me, fully, clearly, without apology. I set the beer down. My hands were trembling. "I think you should go inside," I whispered. He didn't move. "Please," I said. "Go." He stood up, walked past me slowly. But just before the door closed behind him, he paused. "You keep looking at me like that," he said, "like you want me to do something we can't take back." Then the door shut. I pressed my hands to my face, heart pounding, breath shallow, because he was right. I did look at him like that. I was looking for something that wasn't mine. The next few days I avoided him, left the kitchen when he walked in, pretended to be asleep when he passed by the hallway. My husband didn't notice. Or maybe he did, but he trusted me too much to ask. And that trust, God, that trust, that was the knife. He'd built his whole life around loyalty. He didn't just believe in it. He embodied it. He trusted people the way you trust gravity. Quietly. Completely. Especially the people he loved. Especially me. Especially his brother. One night, I found a note tucked under my coffee mug. Just a torn piece of paper. "I'm sorry. I'll move out next week." No signature, just his handwriting. That should have been the end. It almost was. But that night, when I found him in the hallway packing up his things, our eyes met again, and something inside me broke loose. "I don't want you to go," I said. He dropped the hoodie he was folding. "What?" "I don't want you to go," I said again, quieter this time. We stood there in the low light. Neither of us moved. "I can't stay," he said. "Not if I keep feeling this." I stepped forward before I could stop myself. Close, enough to see the freckles under his eyes, the line of his jaw, the flicker of restraint in his throat as he swallowed. "Then don't feel it," I whispered. But he didn't listen, and neither did I. His hands were on my waist before I could say anything else. My mouth found his like it had always belonged there, like I'd been waiting for that kiss since the moment I met him. It wasn't soft. It wasn't hesitant. It was furious, hungry, desperate. It didn't last. He pulled away. I hated that. But those brief few seconds, they destroyed everything. I staggered back like I'd touched fire. He didn't say anything. Just looked at me like he already knew we'd crossed a line we couldn't ever return from. He left the hallway without a word. I stood there alone, lips burning, shame crawling up my spine like ice. That night, I crawled into bed next to my husband and cried silently into his back. He reached for my hand in his sleep and murmured, "You okay?" I said yes. And that lie, that was the real beginning of the end. We didn't talk about that kiss. Not the next day, not the day after. But something in me had already changed. It wasn't love. That's what I told myself. It wasn't real. It was proximity. Tension. A fantasy brought too close. A moment I should have buried the second it happened. But I didn't bury it. I kept watering it. The next time we kissed, it wasn't an accident. It was in the laundry room. My husband was out on a night shift, and I'd just put a load in the dryer when the door opened. And there he was, sweatshirt damp from rain, hair falling over his eyes. We didn't speak. He stepped in, closed the door, and pressed me against the machine without hesitation. His hands were in my hair, mine curled in his shirt, and this time the kiss was slower, hungrier. There was no guilt, not in that moment, only release. Afterward, I sat on the cold floor, shaking. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard, avoiding my eyes. "This can't happen again," I said. He nodded. "It won't." It did. Again and again. Always when the house was quiet. Always in shadows. In corners. In spaces that didn't belong to us. We never said "I love you." We never even said each other's names during it. Like that would make it more real. More human. My husband never questioned it. He never saw the tiredness in my eyes, never noticed how I flinched when he touched me some nights. He was working more, trying to earn overtime to save for a family trip. He thought we were building something, and I was tearing it apart, plank by plank. The worst part was the way the guilt started to dull. At first it was sharp, piercing. I'd cry in the shower. I'd overcompensate with smiles, with dinners, with careful affection. But the more I gave into it, the more I let it happen, the more the guilt became background noise, just a low hum in the back of my mind. Until one morning, it wasn't background anymore. It was Sunday. My husband had gone to get groceries, and I was still in bed when I heard footsteps down the hall. I thought it was him. I sat up, heart jumping. But it was the other one. He was leaning in the doorway, watching me. There was something dark in his face. No smirk, no teasing. "Just wait. Can't keep doing this," he said quietly. I nodded. "I know," but I didn't stop him when he crossed the room. I didn't stop him when he sat beside me, when he touched my face, and I didn't stop myself either. We kissed again, longer, slower. And just as I moved to pull away, just as I felt the edge of shame pressing in, neither of us heard the front door open. We were too lost in each other to notice. The kiss deepened, hands tangled, breaths uneven. His fingers curled in my hair, my hands clenched in his shirt like a lifeline. The world outside the room disappeared. The front door clicked again, as footsteps crossed the threshold. Heavy, deliberate footsteps, my husband. And then, it happened. He walked in, right through the open doorway. I want to bury myself every time I recall that moment. He saw everything. His wife, his brother, all of it. We were too caught up to even notice, too wrapped up in the heat, in the desperate need, in the reckless abandon. I don't know how long it went on before Aaron noticed him. I didn't. Not yet. I held on to him unknowingly when he tried to pull away. I didn't open my eyes until I heard Aaron say, "It's not what it looks like." He was there, my husband. He was standing just a few feet away, frozen. God. The look on his face still haunts me to this day. I don't remember this part much. I don't know why he was back early. I remember Aaron slipping back into his clothes. One minute he was there, the next he wasn't. I didn't care. My vision went blurry from the tears. He wouldn't speak. I kept rambling on about how it wasn't me, how it was Aaron's idea, how he had manipulated me into it. I remember looking up to his face, searching, looking desperately for validation, even a hint of it. It didn't work. He just stared, blankly. I blamed him. I blamed him being at work so much. I blamed everything else besides me. I couldn't blame me. It would make all this real. I don't know how long it kept going. I followed him as he walked outside, still, wrapped in just the blanket. Still crying, still blaming everything else in my life. It didn't work. Nothing worked. He left. I tried calling, texting. Nothing worked. Days passed without a word. The house felt hollow, like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable to break. Aaron was gone too. He had moved out, disappearing like a ghost from my fractured life, until one day, the final blow came, quiet, unceremonious. I was sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through my phone when a message popped up. It wasn't from him. It was from his lawyer. No warning, no heads up. Just a formal notice that he had filed for divorce. The words blurred on the screen, but their weight crushed me instantly. I stared at the notification for a long time, heart pounding, stomach twisting. The reality hit me harder than I ever expected. This was it. I was hopeful until now. He'd come back. Surely he would. He loved me. He would work on us, fix us. But right then, staring at that message, I realized the gravity of the situation I had put myself in. There was no fixing it anymore, no turning back. It was permanent. It wasn't a surprise, but it crushed me all the same. I was left alone with the ruins of everything I had once taken for granted. Our home, our future, the quiet comfort of knowing he was there. He didn't make it public. He spared me that humiliation at least. The divorce was filed quietly, behind closed doors, but that didn't ease the guilt. If anything, it fed it. Every silent night stretched endlessly, each one heavier with regret. I was alone now, truly alone, with nothing but the echo of what I'd destroyed, the family we had built, the trust I shattered, the brother who vanished without a word. All gone. And the guilt, oh, it ate at me. Every day, every hour, I replayed it all. The kisses, the lies, the betrayal. I wanted to scream for forgiveness, for a chance to rewind. But I knew there was none. I don't know where he is, how he is, if he ever thinks about me, if he ever regrets his decision, if he ever considers taking me back. I die inside every day now. I miss my husband. There is nothing in this world I wouldn't do to get him back. But it's the one thing I can never do any longer. I am left with nothing. Nothing but one truth. I have lost the only man who ever truly loved me, and now I don't know how to keep on living with it.